the White Porch Conversations.
What's going on, guys? Welcome to White Porch Conversations. I don't even know what week we're on. What episode are we on?
This is week 7.
Week 7, our 7th episode of White. And what a good number for you.
Yeah.
The number 7, the number of perfection. That is what the number 7 is. So I think we planned this perfectly.
Will you call and tell Jeannie that?
So the perfection episode, we decided to assign Randy Smith to that day.
Yeah.
And I'm so excited to be here today on the White Porch with one of my dearest friends in the whole world. And I know most of you who watch know who this is. There are probably some of you, so I will let you introduce yourself to the ones.
We may have started.
Is that New York?
Hello? Okay, I'm recording something. Okay, thank you. I'll just call him back.
So we, since there are probably people that are watching that don't know who you are, if you would take just a moment, introduce yourself.
Well, I'm Randy Smith, and I taught school at Lincoln County High School for 36 years.
And Lincoln County Elementary School.
Oh, yeah, Lincoln County Elementary
Yeah.
School for 2 years, which taught me that I'm supposed to teach big people, not little ones.
Yeah. Well,
Kudos to the elementary teachers, for sure.
I was wondering how you were going to introduce yourself if you say I teach or I taught, because technically, I guess you still teach, although he is a retired educator.
Yeah.
He did come back to assist the high school for the musical theater class. So those of you who have ever been to any of the musical theater productions, you probably already know this, but just in case you don't, he is one of the... He is one of the reasons that our musical theater department has been so successful, and it's kind of cool because I was able to be on the front lines of that program with him. Yeah, we were in the very first days of the program, musical. And it is always cool to see now how far that he and Miss Hobbins have brought it. And just to do a shameless plug real quick, a little commercial real quick, they do have their show coming up in April.
The Addams Family.
No, May.
May 5,
Yeah.
6, 7 at 7:30 p.m.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be great.
Yeah, and if you will put in the promo code FCC, you get your tickets for 0% off.
That's right.
And so
That's
you
right.
can use that promo code.
Yeah, exactly.
But no, please come out.
Teacher,
Yeah, please come out and support him and the program. It is awesome. And just to start out today, why don't you tell us a little bit about your early faith journey? Now, there are some really funny stories that you've told me, so feel free to share some of your camp stories, anything like that. But tell us a little bit about how you were raised, your family dynamic, your church dynamic, all of that stuff, just like the early years of.
Well, I grew up in Lincoln Baptist Church, and they started keeping records, I think, when I was 2. But actually, from about a little bit before I was 1 until I was about 21, I never missed a single Sunday of Sunday school.
That's so crazy. Even when you would go on vacation.
On vacations, we either left after Sunday school, or if we were on vacation at 10 a.m., I was sitting in a Sunday school classroom somewhere. And my mother was exceptionally proud because you got a pin. And each year, and the chain would get longer and longer and longer.
So you got a pin for the year. Is that how it works? So and then you added by year.
Yeah, and then at 10, you got a wreath, and then they'd start adding again. So I have a 20-year attendance pin.
Wow.
So
you still have it?
My mother does.
Your mother does.
I'm sure she does.
All right.
I don't have it.
We should have wore that today for the podcast. That would have been cool.
Oh, yeah, I hadn't thought about that. Church was my social life.
Yeah.
Not only a spiritual guide, it was, we had a big youth program, and that's how we did things. We went bowling, we went skating, we went Six Flags, everything I did. Yes.
Heathens. The churches I grew up in, they didn't let us do. No, they did. I'm just joking. they let us do that too.
I probably wouldn't have had the chance to go and do anything much if it wasn't for that. But, it was just a big thing. Now, I was not one of those people who liked to go to church camp.
Yeah, tell us your funny church camps. I don't know
Well-
if you're allowed to share this. I don't want there to be any liability issues on things from whatever year that was, but I'm sure the statute of limitations has passed on
Surely
that
by
anyway.
now. I don't know. I can't even
So
remember
this is a
name.
great icebreaker story. You got to
Yeah.
tell them about.
First of all, most of you may know that Camp Daniel Marshall is in Lincoln County, but that's the farthest I've ever been away from home. To still have been.
It's about as far
in
away
Lincoln
as you
County.
can get from here. Which you grew up, I mean, you can almost see the house he grew up
yeah.
in right there. It's
Yeah.
right behind us.
Yeah.
So it's almost probably the furthest point from there in the county. I mean, you can't get much farther.
Nope,
than
they
Camp
pump in
Daniel.
sunshine. And it was not glamping, that glamorous kind of camping. It
No,
was
it was not.
definitely rustic camping. And we went with another church, which was a primitive Baptist church, which I don't know exactly what that means, except that they were really, really strict. And we ate breakfast and we were in church.
I know what that meant. That meant they didn't want to hang out with you, is what that meant.
Probably so. But anyway, we were going to be there for 4 nights. And it was Ephesians Bible study. Started at 9 o'clock and it went to 11 o'clock. Then from 11 o'clock to noon would be some sort of preaching in the chapel. We'd eat lunch. Then there'd be some more preaching being done from 1 to 2, something like that. Then the boys would play baseball and the girls would swim. And that was unusual for us.
Right.
I've been swimming with Jay and Norman all my life, so I didn't know. What do you mean I can't swim? But they didn't want the boys and
Called
girls.
it what? What they call it? Mixed bathing.
That's right.
They call it mixed
They
bathing.
called it mixed bathing. And I thought, well, I've been bathing with Jay and Norman all my life. But it was overkill.
Yeah.
It was overkill. And I'm 14. And finally, I had just had enough. And the minister of music left every night to go to his house to sleep in his comfortable bed. And there were a bunch of beach towels in the back of his car. Well, I decided that I had had enough. So I snuck into the back seat of his car under the towels. And he drove to Lincoln. His house was where the Baptist Church office is now.
Okay.
And once he got inside, I got out of the back seat and I walked home, which was not that far away.
And that was the last youth camp
That was the first and last.
that he
Because
ever
his
attended.
good dear friend of mine, I don't know if I should say her name, but anyway, she used to say it doesn't take that much church for me. Because it was all church all
Yeah.
the time.
And that's kind of your story. So you said something earlier that made me think, and I wasn't a part of the conversation last night, and it really pertains to some of the reading that you and I had been doing. You were talking about how your social life was kind of constructed around, the church. And I mean, you've told me stories about, Jan Norman and, Marcus Spratlin and all your friends that you grew up with. Y'all played on the street together. You went to church together. You did everything together. And it is interesting how, one of the things that our faith life is supposed to do is create a sense of community. I mean,
Exactly.
that's a really big part of it.
And it was, it was a real big community.
Yeah.
And just from everything from Luann Parks, Bill, Phil Amison, Melinda Flanagan, we could just go on and on and on, naming a lot of people. Mr. Hilliard and Little Hilliard and all of these people. In fact, Mr. Donnie Hill and Mr. Hugh Anthony took a group of boys camping just outside of Cherokee. That was a fun camp trip. Man. That was
That
fun.
one was fun. You didn't sneak away from that one.
No, it is. Well, no, they didn't sneak away from that one. It wasn't church for 24 hours. But there were bears that came down at night. But some of my most fun times in life, were
Right.
on church trips. I mean, roller skating, learning how to bowl.
Yeah.
And I grew up with an alcoholic father who was absent a lot. And so a lot of the men in the Baptist church were surrogate fathers for me. My dad was a good man.
That's a really good thing
Yeah.
to share.
Yeah, my dad was a good man, and he was a tame drunk. My mother would have killed him otherwise, and I really don't remember seeing him actually drunk in my life. Daddy would just disappear, and it was an embarrassment to me. It was something I was deeply ashamed of, thought we were the only family that had problems. And church was where I could go and just be who I was and hang out with all the people that were there. And so many of those men did. They took us under their wings and they took us places and did things. And it was definitely a great sense of community. But after a while, after 20 years of never missing a single Sunday of Sunday school.
Yeah.
One exception was when we had the 13-inch snowstorm in 1973. We didn't have church that day. Well, we didn't. They didn't have church, so it didn't count. So they didn't have church that day, so it did not count. After a while, it was like, why am I doing this? I'm in college.
Right.
And I really didn't have my heart in it. I'd get up and I'd drive up to Green Acres Baptist Church in Athens, and I was just going through the motions. I mean, I was making my mother happy. And, if you ever miss that one time, well, she was right about that.
Yeah, right.
Because once I missed.
It's what my dad tells people all the time. When you miss, and you get that first absent moment, and it's like, it's easy after that.
And after a while, it did get real easy. And in fact, I would resent when people would say, you need to be going to church. You need to be going to church. And I would say, I've been. Now, multiply, 52 times 20, and not to mention the Wednesdays and the revivals and all the other. When you catch up with me, come back and talk to me then.
Yeah, I've been.
I was probably moving away from God. That wasn't my plan. I just wasn't into the organized religion part or the organized church part as much. And that wasn't a good thing. That wasn't a good thing. And in fact, when my son was born, I even made the statement of, he will miss one Sunday of Sunday school every single year of his life. In other words, we are not going to develop this same thing.
Yeah.
And that was... I'm 28 years old.
Right, yeah.
So, you think, I thought I was grown. 28, I was just dumb or dumber than I am now, for sure. And so you start to realize as you get older, I wasn't doing what I was supposed to do.
Yeah, and, one of the things I know that's true for a lot of people, and I'm sure it's true for you, I know even with my upbringing, I can say it's been true for me at different seasons. Sometimes you get cynical.
Oh,
you get super jaded, whether it be the people, or like you say, the organized religion part of whatever it is. There's a lot of factors that can play into that.
Well, and you start to question.
Yeah.
I think that's normal. In fact, I think the greatest faith springs from doubt.
Absolutely. It's healthy.
Because if you don't question, then it's just brainwashing. I don't know that it's real. So I went through a big period there of questioning a lot of what I had been taught.
Yeah.
Questioning Bible stories, questioning I won't say I questioned the existence of God, because I've always believed in God, a higher power, but I wasn't staying with what I had been taught as a Christian.
Yeah.
And I would get really cynical is the best word, because I would see things that would go on in other churches or with other people, and I'm going, I don't think I want to be one of those Christians.
Yeah, exactly.
If that's Christ-like behavior, probably don't count me in.
Yeah, exactly.
Not that I was doing any better than they were.
Right. No,
not that I was doing any better
but
than they were.
We always look for things around us to validate ourselves sometimes and make us feel that we're better than. I tell people all the time, one of the things that I know that I see in my own life, is I've always seen people say, or I've thought myself, well, at least I'm not like them. That's you try to disassociate with that type of activity and behavior, and almost make it where you make yourself feel better about yourself and your own flaws, because we all know that we have our own flaws, but what we want is something to make us feel better about our flaws. And so when we see those things,
well, as being a cynic,
in
psychology they talk about confirmation bias.
Right.
When we see evidence, and it could just be anecdotal evidence, but when we see evidence that we think proves our side, and it doesn't prove anything, It can be some evidence that suggests something.
Right.
But I'd see that and I'd say, yeah, see, I was right.
Yeah.
I was right. And then I would feel better about myself because I'm thinking I was right.
Yeah.
You would look at these people and there would just always be all kinds of questions.
Yeah.
And I did not do as good a job, I know, in keeping my family going to church. My wife did. Jeannie did a lot.
And you tell stories about, although you, and I love what you just shared about the church and having those father figures in your life. I don't know that I've ever heard you say that way. That was just really a great thing to remind us of, that's one of the roles that we play in the community of faith, is being those things. But you have always told me that, when it came to your wife's family, that you did get to see a real example.
My mother was a real example.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Not to take away from her.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
no.
You've always said that too.
My mother was a real example. But, with an alcoholic father and a negligent father, an absent father, we would definitely fall in the category of dysfunctional.
Yeah.
Whereas Jeannie's family was the ideal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Her mom and dad.
The Beaver family.
Yeah.
Leave it to Beaver family.
They didn't preach sermons, they lived them.
Right.
Watching them, you saw God.
Yeah.
You saw the Spirit of God when you watched them. And their family was more like, it's probably abnormal.
Yeah.
Most families probably were not like them,
Yeah.
but it's what you would hope to be. It's that ideal kind of family. And Jeannie's mom and daddy both were just very, very devout in their faith.
Yeah.
And they never beat it over my head.
Yeah.
On occasions, Jeannie's daddy, I can remember sitting at the beach by Jeannie's daddy, and we were just looking out at the ocean and just staring, just enjoying the breeze. And he said, when you look out at that ocean and you think about how big it is, it makes you realize how small we are. And then when you think about who created that ocean, then you have to understand that the importance that you're giving yourself. Now, he was not trying to say that God is trying to make us feel small, but he's saying that we should realize in many situations that we aren't as big as we think we are, or as smart as we think we are, or as good as we think we are, that there is something bigger, greater, better. And I would take from that, but I don't know that I ever sat down to share with him to say thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's an amazing part of your testimony for me. Again, you had the strong mother, the mother that became everything to the family. I mean, and your dad at the end, I mean, you've told the story, did break alcoholism.
19 and a half years of sobriety.
Yeah, so it's not
and helped lots of people himself. And, but by then I had gone off to college.
Yeah.
So during my formative years, he was absent. Mm-hmm. So again, people like Mr. Buddy Marlowe, Mr. Donnie Hill, Mr. Hugh Anthony, I could just go on and on naming people. Mr. Mitchell Flanagan taught me how to water ski. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't have had those opportunities had I not had those people in my life.
And I think that is, again, it's a part of your story that you've never, and I feel like we've talked about everything. It's so cool to hear you talk about this part of it, which is one of the reasons that we do these conversations the way that we do them. You were wanting a little bit of a structure and script to start out. I was like, no, I just want to talk because I want to give you freedom to just share. And I don't think I've ever heard you tell those stories, and how amazing it is for you to share that to the people that are listening, for us to understand, especially men. Because when you grew up, having an absent father would have been less common. It still may be common, but far less common than it is today.
At least it seemed that way to me, for sure, because everybody I knew had a mom and dad at home, and a dad that worked, and a dad that, was there for them, and a dad that helped them in Boy Scouts, and a dad that took them fishing, and a dad that did all these things.
Yeah, and then now for guys to have it so available, to have so many young men now that are fatherless, for lack of a better word, to show what we can do. Because I will say that one of the things that I commend you for, and it's maybe one of the best parts of your story to me, is that you changed that structure in your own home, in the sense you were a good father, and you are a good father.
Well, thank you.
And I'm not. Some
days I wonder.
Right. Well, I'm not going to say that you didn't ever make a mistake or anything, but I will say that I was able to be there for a good portion of Hunter's life.
Exactly.
You know, I know. I think we're separated by about 6 or 7 years or so. So when I met you, you know, he was young, and I've watched you interact with him. And man, it's crazy to think about now, because to hear you tell all these stories, how different that could have been had it not been for some men in your life that made some investments to show you what could be, whether it be father-in-law or men in your church. That I just think that's just an incredible testimony of how God can use people in our life to help us
and to teach the rest of us that we might want to do that. Now, as a teacher, my best qualities as a teacher have come from my dad. Mm-hmm. You know, my dad was a football coach, coached girls basketball, and his students really loved him. I've never met any of his former students who didn't say how much they loved Coach Smith, and they talked about how much they loved him. Because Daddy loved everybody. You know, Daddy loved everybody.
Yeah.
And I'm a lot like that, particularly with my students. You know, I might like some more than others on certain days.
Oh, absolutely.
But, you know, my good qualities, I think, come from my dad as far as getting up and teaching, trying to be entertaining enough to capture somebody's attention, being loud enough. I get all that from my dad.
Yeah,
and it took me a while to be able to say that, by the way.
Yeah.
It took me a long time to say that.
One of the most powerful moments I've ever seen in regards to the testimony of your father, and you might have to correct the way this story happened, but it was you and I, and then our wives, and then Lamar and Barbara Leroy were having dinner, and he teared up and literally started to cry as he shared the story of, I think your dad either gave him a sports coat or a tie, or a sports coat and tie, because at the time Lamar didn't have one, and he was
for some banquet, and he tells that story, and Lamar often says, you know, what a big impact Daddy had in his life.
He really did that, and he really impressed me to tell the story of how much your dad affected his life.
And that was before things got really bad with alcoholism.
Yeah,
I'm sure there were elements of alcoholism there, but that's one reason I'm so close to Lamar. I mean, that's one reason I look to him. Daddy just loved him. When Daddy died, we wanted Lamar to speak and sing at Daddy's funeral. You know, and that was just that bond there that extended through other generations. And then I get to teach Lamar's daughters and then many of his grandsons. And, you know, it just... Again, so many of the good things, if there are any good things about me,
you can see.
I can see where
that's amazing.
In teaching, I get a lot of good things from my mom because she's so even keel.
Yeah.
And I've learned to be. Anybody who knows me knows that I'm not always even keel, but she was always such a stabilizer.
Yeah.
You know, she was a stabilizer, and. She was a hard worker, and she put 2 sons through college, and this was no hope scholarship or student loans. And
a strong woman.
Yeah, and
for sure.
And I graduated with a degree and a car, and life took off.
Yeah. Well, you know, for sake of time, we'll fast forward a little bit now. So then, you know, as you were telling your story earlier, you kind of just pulled away, as so many people do. I mean, I think that your story is the norm. I think that your experience with just being so exposed, I guess would be the word, or thrust into the church environment, and having that moment of just wanting to break free from that, and then you did that for, you know, some years, and then not to say this to take any credit myself, but you know, about 6 or 7 years ago or so, when I moved back, you and I were able to have some really, you know, deep conversations is how some of this started. I can remember one day in particular, you came by the church and we were in the office building, and you and I just sat down, and you really began to pour out some of your frustrations with faith and the church, and whether you want to say it's, like I said, frustrations or confusion or
just about the theology.
Yeah.
It was nothing against Lincoln Baptist
No,
Church
no. Yeah,
or
it
anything
was,
like that.
It was bigger
just,
than that.
Yeah,
it was much bigger than that. Yeah, for sure.
And you are the one who guilted me into coming to church.
Well, it is a funny story if you never heard how we started our second service. So we had not had a second service yet, and then I was in Belangia, Georgia, doing a wedding in Belangia, and him and I were on the phone, and I can take you to the place where I was driving through the mountains in Belangia, and where I made the statement to him that he said, well, this is the way he said it, well, if you would do something early in the morning, don't do all that stuff to just do stuff, but just do what you need to do and get it over with. And he said, if you would do something like that, then I would come. And so it was either that week or the next week that we met, and we decided we were going to start that second service. And I said that if nobody comes but Randy Smith, then we're going to keep this going. And since then, he has been attending, and one of the great testimonies. And again, it's really funny because it really is kind of a Luke 15 story where you think about the story where Jesus says you leave the 99 for the one. That was kind of what my thought was for this. It was like, all right, then we're going to do it all for one person.
When you said we're doing this, I thought, dang, that means I got to show up. And of course, it's been wonderful.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been wonderful. And to again I've got friends, I've got school friends, I've got classmate friends, growing up friends.
Oh, yeah.
But I had lost a lot of the church friends.
Yeah.
And, this has been good for me. And to be in a place where I can question. You've made that, to certainly brag on you a lot, but you make it easy for someone to say, no, hold on a minute.
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
I don't think I believe that, and you're going to have to explain that to me.
Yeah.
And you've heard me say that probably more times than you wish. Because
not more than I wish, but more than I can count, for sure.
And for some things, there's not going to be an answer.
Right. And that's what you and I have basically come to the conclusion of probably more times than not.
Yeah. A lot of times you were able to clarify a lot of things, but, for some things, there's just not going to be an answer, at least not on this earthly plane.
Yeah.
And after this, I don't think those questions are really going to matter a whole lot.
Yeah.
As far as what I was asking, those probably aren't really important questions. And I don't know if I used the questions sort of as a defense too. Yeah, but what about?
Yeah.
We're bad about what aboutisms.
Yeah.
And any time you talk about something, somebody can always throw up, yeah, but what about?
Yeah.
And they'll throw up this rare exception. And again, it'll just be some anecdotal something. And I was bad about what aboutisms.
So my question then, as you think about that and where you are now, because I do think that one of the reasons I wanted to have this conversation with you so badly, and I'm so glad that you're here, is because I know there are so many people who their story is exactly like your stories. Like I said, you're definitely not the exception. You're more of the rule. So if you were to speak to someone who is dealing with the same doubts, frustrations, trying to pull back from faith, whether it be because of people or because of the religious institute itself, and I know this is a hard question. You probably would want to think about it a little more, because you're probably going to think later, oh, I should have said such and such, because that's what we always do. But your story is so powerful in how you have done what so few people do as they grow, as they get older. Statistically speaking, as people get older, I mean, even at the age that I am, statistically speaking, if people are still away from faith and away from the church and trying to disregard that part of their life, statistically, it's very rare for someone to make that change, and you have. And not only have you, but you've done it with such amazing grace. And
I don't always feel that way.
It excites me. So if you could talk to somebody who was dealing with the same thing, Like, what would be your advice to them? Like, what would you say to them?
My advice would be the very things that I've heard you say. It doesn't have to be this church.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't have to be this church or that church. Find you a church. Try several out. You know, you've said FCC may not be the church for you, but if we aren't, that's okay.
Yeah.
There's one out there for you. So that would be one thing, because you've got to get around Christians. You've got to get around that community of Christians. And one of the things I'd say, and it's okay to have questions.
Yes.
It's
absolutely.
okay to have doubts. I felt such guilt for just having the question.
Yeah.
See, I dealt with so much guilt just having the doubts.
Yeah.
And I just want to say, look, I think we've all been there.
Yeah.
You know, we've all had this.
For sure.
And
For sure.
I don't know that we ever are going to find the answers by ourselves.
Oh, that's good.
I don't think we're going to
Yeah,
find it by
that's
ourselves.
good.
I don't think my sitting at home alone, even if I'm reading a Bible, I just don't think that we're going to find any kind of comfort, any kind of answers, any kind of peace. You know, and I think that's, if anything, that's what we all want. We want peace in our lives, and we want to feel that there is something beyond this.
Yeah.
There's something greater than this. And the book that we read in book study, C.S. Lewis's Mere Christianity, did such a fabulous job of just sort of brick by brick building that foundation, because he was an atheist.
Yes.
You know, and
An intelligent atheist.
exceptionally intelligent.
That makes it even harder.
Yes, it was for me to read that at times. And, you know, if you could just share your story with someone in a very non-confrontational, forgive my use of this word, preachy way.
Yeah, right.
Because a lot of
I agree.
times, you know, we hear go out and witness to others and all of that. And sometimes people try to cram all of that in one visit.
Yeah.
You know, they're going to witness to you, and they got to tell you every single thing that they believe and everything that you should be believing, and they just pile it in, and that's too much.
Yeah.
That's too much. So it's something that you would share over a period of time. And again, I'll go back to my wife's mom and dad. You know, live the sermon. Mm-hmm. You know, don't preach it. Actually live it. Now, I'm a long way from being a good one at that.
Yeah.
That's something I will have to work on all the time. I make 1,000, I tell my students, I make 1,000 mistakes a day, and sometimes 1,002. You know, it's just like that. But I think for someone, whether they admit it or not, everybody's searching.
Yes, I agree with that.
They're searching.
They are.
And sometimes they don't know what they're searching for.
And even people who are so, they're so dead set on convincing you that they, you know, are set in their ideologies and their, you know, theology, whatever. Even those people, if they were really honest, if they were to tell you the truth, they would say they're searching too. I mean, because I know even for me, who I feel like, man, I'm so certain on so many things I believe, I feel like, but at the end of the day, if I really come to a place of honesty, I'm still searching, you know, for truth and understanding and all of that stuff.
And the good news is God's waiting on us.
Yes.
In fact, we don't really have to search. He's right there.
Yes.
When I went to Israel and Jordan, which I've told you before, that was like a field trip, and it was hot, so I didn't like it in so many ways. And when I went there, because you're riding on in a boat on the Sea of Galilee,
Yeah.
because you are right there in Jerusalem, walking those streets. You know, you're places where Jesus has walked. I really expected to feel this stronger spirit.
Yeah.
You know, I just thought, oh, it's going to feel so different. You're going to feel so much closer to God by being actually where this is. Now, it certainly made certain stories more meaningful.
Right.
But I didn't necessarily feel God's presence any stronger. And that bothered me. It bothered me a lot. And after getting home and recovering from the trip and thinking about it, there was a big lesson to be learned there. God is just as present and as strong
Absolutely.
in
Come on.
Lincoln, Georgia,
That's right.
as it is in Jerusalem.
Come on.
He's not more present there.
Yeah.
He is as present there
Yeah.
as he is here
Come on.
in any other place of the world.
He's preaching.
And that was a lesson that I took from that.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know that I want to go back in the summertime. Yeah, but I learned just from that
Yeah.
that though it's great to see.
Yeah.
You know, it's great to visit and all of that. But you don't have to be there to feel him any stronger. Now, somebody's going to throw up in my face, well, that's the way I feel about church.
Yeah.
You know, somebody's going to say, well, I feel like I can feel him just as strong
Oh,
sitting
yeah.
in my house
Yeah.
as I can being in church. And I don't know that that's exactly the same
I
thing.
I think you said it perfectly earlier. I mean, I don't know that I've ever heard it said so well in my life when you just said, I just don't know that you can figure it all out by yourself. I don't know that you can experience it all by yourself. The peace, the understanding that you're looking for. There's just something about community being a part of that. And not that by myself I can't feel any of it, because I can.
No, of course.
But the community plays a huge part in it. That putting myself in relationships with people that are searching with me. Some ahead of me, some even behind me.
Exactly.
You know, and we can learn from both sides of them. you know?
Exactly. They have the same questions we have,
Yeah.
and they bring a different perspective.
Yeah.
We've all got our own baggage. We've all got our own backgrounds. And as homogenous as we like to think everybody in Lincolnton is, that's just not true.
Yeah.
You know, everybody's different.
Yeah.
And our trips through life are different. So sometimes it's so good to hear a different perspective.
Yeah.
Or for somebody just to, maybe not even a different perspective. Sometimes it feels so good for someone just to say, you know, I thought the same
Yeah.
thing.
To know that you're not alone in what you're thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it either you go, oh, well, good, you know, I'm not going to die and go to hell just because I was thinking of that. I hope not. But it also it validates what you're feeling.
Yeah.
You know, that this is a real feeling. This is a real good or bad, you know, and to know that other people have been there too.
Yeah.
That's how AA became a successful
Yeah.
recovery program. That's how many recovery programs are so successful. You know, it's based on, back what you said earlier, that sense of community.
Yeah.
Looking for the similarities rather than how we're different. And we don't do that in our country much anymore.
Yeah.
We're so looking at how we're different from everybody and being divisive that, you know, we need to be looking for those similarities.
Okay.
And I would tell someone, find someone you could talk to. Find someone of faith that
Yeah.
you could just go ask questions to and not be embarrassed about it. I was very embarrassed to go and ask certain questions of people because I was taught this is what it is, and 2 + 2 is 4. And, you know, if you said it, then I believed it.
Yeah.
And then when I started doubting, again, getting repetitive, but there's, you know, there gets to be some guilt and shame involved.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until you said, well, it doesn't hurt my feelings that you hadn't come to hear me speak since I've been in Lincoln. Because that's what you said.
Yeah, that's what I said.
And then I said, well, maybe then if you'd start an early morning service and get rid of a lot of that fluff, then maybe I'd come along and do that.
And yet here you are.
And here we are.
Well, it's amazing.
And
you
I'm
know,
a better person for it.
I'm so thankful for you and your testimony, because there are a lot of people that are going through what you've been through and that need to know that it's never too late, you know, to re-engage faith and re-engage God. And I don't ever look at your life and think that that you weren't saved, or like you said, you didn't become an atheist or anything. I know there are people who do, but that wasn't necessarily your story. But there was something about just coming back and re-engaging something that was valuable in your life. And I just am glad that you're able to tell that story today. So thank you for sharing that story.
Thanks for having me.
And if you're out there and you know you can relate to some of this stuff about disengaging or having frustrations with church people, as we like to say, Christians. We didn't even do any Friends references, but
right.
do some quotations there. you know, we all have some of those moments, and I hope that this testimony and this story of faith and his faith journey of returning, and it is a rarity to see somebody do what he has done. That's one of the beautiful. That's why his story for me is so miraculous, because statistically you don't see people do what he's done, and so for him to be able to tell that shows you that you can. And what a beautiful story of finding a sense of community and the value in that. I had no idea we were going to spend so much time talking about that concept, but it's been a very important, very valuable thing for you to hear about, is finding that place of community. So thank you again for having this conversation with us.
Enjoyed it. Thanks for having me.
We love you.
Love you
Love
too.
you so much. And I hope you enjoyed this. If you have any questions, comments, anything like that, comment below. And as I always tell you, I know this guy right here. If there's anything that you would like to know about his story or anything, or if there's something that he said that you relate to, he's a great ear. He's a psychology teacher, so he understands
A little bit. Just enough to be dangerous.
So if there is something that you're going, man, that's something I relate to, man, let him know. And I'm sure he would like to encourage you in some way with that. Thank you guys for watching today. We hope that you enjoyed this week of White Porch Conversations, and we'll see you next week as we come back together to have another conversation next week. Y'all have a good one.
The White Porch Conversations.